and welcome back to another episode of Technique Tasters with Creative Scrapbooker magazine. Tonight I wanted to make a fairly simple project using some products from Stampers Anonymous. I have the Floral Elements stamp set, and I know there's a reflection here, but I hope you can see these images. There's some beautiful fine line drawings of some florals and some leaves and other stems, really pretty. And I'm going to use that, as well as I'm going to use some embossing powder, some archival black ink, and some oxides to do some watercoloring. And this is actually watercolor paper, and most watercolor papers are two-sided. So one side has a bit of texture and the other side is smooth. I'm going to be using the smooth side. And now I'm going to use my archival ink, and I'm going to ink this up first in black. We're not done with the stamping. So what I'm going to do, I wanted the black line on these flowers and on these leaves, but I also want to emboss it because I want to create kind of some water walls for some watercolor. So I'm going to leave my paper just like that. I'm going to wipe off a little bit of the top ink, whatever's just sitting on the surface there, as much as I can. And I'm going to grab my embossing ink. So I'm just going over all of those one more time. And I'm going to come back in and I'm going to apply the same pressure. So once I've got the embossing ink down, now I'm going to remove my watercolor paper. So I've got the embossing powder in clear from Ranger. I'm going to use that. And I'm just going to lay that over top of those images. So now we have the fine lines, but they're in black. And once they cool, you'll be able to run your finger over it and you'll be able to feel a little bit of height. That's created just a tiny little barrier that's going to hold our water in as we do some watercoloring. Going to add a little bit of water to these images just to kind of introduce some water and some medium to the paper. And this, when we add the pigment, you'll see how it just catches. So now I'm just going to put a bit of mowed lawn here on my work surface. And I am just going to pick up a little bit of that pigment, and now I'm going to drop it in to that area that I had already added the water. And it kind of pools a little bit, and you'll be able to move it around with your brush and just to the outer edges of the image. But that little barrier that we created with the embossing will hold everything inside, and that's why I love to do some embossing on my images. Waiting for that to dry. It is still a little bit, I can tell it's a little bit damp on the paper. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to create the background for this card. I'm going to take some Versamark and I am going to randomly stamp all over this piece of watercolor paper. I'm going to start off the edge, and it's hard to see, but you'll be able to see it once I get some embossing powder on there. And now I'm going to grab white embossing powder this time, again from Ranger. And this is the super fine detail powder. And I'm going to sprinkle that all over. And now I'm going to add some color on here. So before, when I colored the flowers, I used Pick Raspberry and Ripe Persimmon. And now I'm just going to take it down a step in color, and I'm using Kitsch Flamingo and Saltwater Taffy. And I'm going to start with the pink. I'm just putting a little bit of that down here again on my mat. It's a Kitsch Flamingo. And I've got some water on my brush, and now I'm not shy this time. I'm not going to dab off my water, and I'm going to pick up some of that ink. And I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to go back and forth across the panel, and now you can see those flowers coming through. And I'm adding in some ink, and I'm going back and forth. Maybe add some more. It's better to start with less. You can always add as you go, but it's really hard to take it away once it's there. So start at the bottom, and now I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to come down. And I'm not trying to fill the entire panel because I do want to go over it with the saltwater taffy as well. Now I'm going to bring in the saltwater taffy, and I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm just adding that to my surface. I'm going to add a little bit of water to it, and I'm going to pick it up with my brush. And I'm doing the same. I'm coming in from the bottom, and you'll see that it kind of drops into the white areas. Give it a quick dry, and it will fade a little bit as it dries, so let's give that a quick dry. A little bit pink, so I'm actually going to go back into the right persimmon, and I'm just going to put a tiny bit down here, just a little bit. I'm going to add some water, and I don't want to pick up too much. I'm blending it in to the saltwater taffy, and that's the thing I like about working on a surface like this, is that you can create your own custom colors. So I'm coming back in, and I'm just going to deposit a little bit of that. Now I'm going to let this dry. And while this is drying, I am going to fussy cut out my flowers. Here we go. There are my images that I fussy cut. And the last step before we create this card is I'm just going to trim down. This is dry. I'm just going to use my Swiffer again just to wipe off and expose that white stamped image in the background. Just make sure there's nothing on it. I'm just going to trim this card panel down. So I'm using my Tonic trimmer, guillotine trimmer. I love this trimmer. And now I'm going to start building my card. And I'm going to grab some foam squares, and this will help me to give it a little bit of dimension. There. And now this, I think, would look really pretty like that. Gives it some height, brings the eye up. And then this one, we have 3 leaves on here, but I'm going to cut it. So I'm going to cut this just like this, and that will give me 2 separate leaves that I can use here. So I'm going to take these, and I'm going to tuck those under here like this. And then this one, I'm going to have this guy peeking out right here, just like that. And that gives us lots of green and brings everything to the eye. So for that, for those little pieces, I'm just going to use a little bit of liquid glue. All right. For my sentiment on this card, I have used some Sizzix friendship word dies, and I cut out hello friend. So I'm going to use that as my sentiment for this card. So I'm going to once again use my liquid glue. Gemstones that I wanted to place on here just to kind of finish this off. These I just pulled out of my stash, so I'm just going to put a few of those down. I have my card panel is all done, and now I'm just going to put that on top of my card. And there we go. That's my card project. So that is today's card project using the Floral Elements stamp set from Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz, and using the Sizzix friendship word dies, some oxides and embossing powders from Ranger, and some jewels and embellishments just from my stash. I wanted to share a few other projects that I made using this collection as well. So here I used one of the Stampers Anonymous stencils. This is one of the mini stencils. And I used the new Lost Shadow Distress Oxide as my ink there in the background. And I just used a blending tool to put that stencil down. Same technique here on these flowers with the watercolor. I did the exact same technique with these words. I cut them out 3 times and then I cut them out with some foil paper there on the top and added some sequins. One last project that I have, here's another version. There's this one image, I really like this one particular floral. So I cut that out a number of times. I stamped it out a couple of times and I colored it to the rainbow. So red, orange, yellow, green in the leaves, blue or teal, and violet. So I cut that out, splattered a little bit of gold metallic paint in the background. I'm not sure if you can see that. And then I cut these words out with white cardstock twice, and then I cut a layer out with the gold. So it's a really pretty, it's a mini slimline, and I love this card. I love how it turned out. So there are my projects. I hope you got some ideas and inspiration for using this stamp set from Stampers Anonymous, and thanks again for watching.